For now, as we look forward to a very dynamic day, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, title sponsor Whirlink, Whirlink Communication Limited, Whirlink Enterprise 360, which is a one-stop IT solutions for enterprise and government organization to connect everyone, everywhere, all the time. Connect the unconnected. That's what Whirlink is all about. Our strength partner, ladies and gentlemen, Shivam Cement, our valuable contributors, Rashtriya Vanijya Bank Limited, Nepal Bank Limited, NIC Asia Bank Limited, Encel Asiata Limited, Lakshmi Bank Limited, Siddhartha Bank Limited, Himalayan Bank Limited, research partner Fax Nepal, Fax Research and Analytics, our valuable contributors, Nepal Telecom, NMB Bank Limited, Muktinath Vikas Bank Limited, and our media partner, Fiscal Nepal. And above all, to all the participants, that's to all of you. So can we begin with a round of applause to everyone who's sparing their valuable time herein. Thank you so much to everyone who's made this possible today. And let me take you through what you can expect out of today here at Yak Yeti. We begin with the formal commencement, a brief ceremony herein, which, however, would be very, very important in order to set the tone for the entire event that we are here for. Following which, we are looking forward to 7 various sessions, 7 equally important sessions spread across the day. The first half will see 4 parallel sessions, and as you know, they will be dealing, each one of them will be dealing with a particular sector that we have chosen or which are contributing, very centrally contributing to the economic sector of Nepal. And we certainly are having distinguished, accomplished, or outstanding management leaders who will be moderating and also giving their very, very valuable inputs in course of the session that they will be participating in. Without any particular order, in fact, in alphabetical order, one of our sessions is on banking and financial institutions. The session moderator is our very own, the very accomplished Mr. Anil Keshri Shah, the CEO, Nabil Bank, is right here with us. A warm welcome to you, sir. In fact, we are very, very much humbled and gratified. The panelist is, again, it has this list of very accomplished professionals. Dr. Gunakar Bhatta, Executive Director, Nepal Rashtra Bank. If you are here, sir, we'd like to acknowledge your presence. If not, yes, we're looking forward towards their arrival. All our esteemed moderators and panelists will be seated in the first 2 rows, ladies and gentlemen. The second panelist for the session on banking and financial institution is Ms. Barsha Shrestha, Senior Business Head, ICRA Nepal. Barsha, ma'am, if you could kindly accept our welcome. Ms. Shrestha is replacing Ms. Anupama Khunjeli, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Khunjeli could not make it in the 11th hour owing to some very unavoidable circumstances. We also extend her thank you for all the cooperation and the positivism that she had extended. Our other distinguished panelist is Mr. Rameshwar Khanal, former Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Nepal. Last but not the least, the final panelist for the session, Mr. Bhuvan Kumar Dahal, former Vice President, NBA. The other session, ladies and gentlemen, in education will be moderated by Mr. Narottam Aryal, President, King's College. The panelists, namely Professor Dr. Biju Kumar Thapalia, Dean, Faculty of Management, Purvanchal University, Ms. Milan Dikshit, co-founder and principal, Rato Bangla School, Ms. Swastika Shrestha, co-founder and CEO, Teach for Nepal, Professor Dr. Bhola Thapa, Vice Chancellor, Kathmandu University. Entrepreneurship is the other session, which will be moderated by our very own Mr. Ranjit Acharya, CEO, Prisma Advertising, a motivational speaker as well, and he wears many hats. The distinguished panelists, Ms. Darshana Shrestha, Vice President F1, Mr. Hemraj Dhakal, Co-founder and Managing Director, IME, Ms. Mousami Shrestha, Director, Srinagar Agro Group, and Asim Mansingh Basnet, the Country Director, Patao Private Limited. The session on health will be moderated by Dr. Bhagwan Koirala, the President of Medical Council. The panelist, Dr. Hector Gentapanan, Junior Gayarist, CEO, Shir Memorial Adventist Hospital. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Dr. Basanta Panta, MD, PhD, Chairman, Annapurna Neurological Institute and Allied Sciences. Dr. Madhu Dixit, Executive Chairperson, Neuro Hospital. Professor Dr. Sanduk Rued, Secretary, Til Ganga Institute of Ophthalmology. The session on infrastructure will be led by Mr. Ramkrishna Khatiora, CEO, NIFRA. The panelist, Mr. Sushil Bhatta, CEO, Investment Board, Nepal. Ms. Elenia Bainbridge, Urban Infrastructure Advisor, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. She will be replacing Ms. Heidi Tavakoli. The other panelists, Dr. Jagdish Chandra Pokhrel, former Vice Chairman, National Planning Commission, and Mr. Rabi Singh, the President, Federation of Contractors Association of Nepal. The session on technology will be led by Mr. Bibhushan Bishta, the CEO, Young Innovations. The panelist, Mr. Subhash Sharma, CEO, F1 Soft Private Limited. Ms. Mona Nyacho, founder, Monal Tech. Mr. Deepesh Pradhan, Managing Director, Yomari Private Limited, and Mr. Amun Thapa, CEO, Sustodil. Ladies and gentlemen, the other session is on tourism, led by moderator Mr. Upal Mazumdar, the Head of Practice Tourism. The distinguished panelists, namely Ms. Nandini Lahe Thapa, Senior Director, Nepal Tourism Board, Mr. Yogendra Shakya, Managing Director, Ace Hotels, Mr. Suman Pandey, President and Founder, Explore Himalaya Travel and Adventure, Mr. Sanjeev Gautam, former Director General, CAN. And that is it. However, this list of the speakers, such accomplished and outstanding names, already makes me skip to the sessions that are spreading across the day today, ladies and gentlemen. So, said that one more time, we very much thank you all for your kind and very valuable presence, all the optimism that you have shown to us from day one. And yes, we are now almost set for the inaugural ceremony, awaiting the arrival of our chief guest. Thank you so much for your kind cooperation, and we request you all to kindly bear with us for a few more minutes. In the meantime, a request. I'm sure you all are carrying one or two of these cellular devices. Can you please take a moment to take these out and put this in an inaudible mode throughout the proceedings inside the auditorium? We would very much appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, today is not just another episode of the continuous sharing and learning at MAN. Just take a moment to take a quick pan around yourselves. The very visible pace and intensity of changes, developments, adversities, opportunities around us, they're calling out and loud to reap more from this rare convergence of over 250 outstanding and accomplished management executives. We at MAN are looking forward to a vibrant day of meaningful deliberations and thought-provoking perspectives, engagements, and networking, and much, much more, as we look forward, basically, to connecting purpose with approach for survival, revival, and growth. Please note these words. These are what we're going to be dwelling upon throughout the proceedings of the conference. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to WorldLink Presents CEO Conference 2022. I am Shivani Thapa Bosniak, news editor with Nepal Television, and very much pleased and privileged to be steering you all through a couple of major engagements of this conference at this venue. We're pleased to share that our distinguished invitees have already arrived at the venue. So with permission from the floor and the organizers, allow me to proceed with the formalities up on stage. My pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost to inviting up on chair the President of the Management Association of Nepal, Mr. Kiran Kumar Shrestha. Please join me in requesting Mr. Shrestha to accept the chair of this inaugural session of this conference. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And together with all of you, it's a pleasure, and indeed I'm feeling humbled to place my humble request to our chief guest, the Minister for Communications and Information Technology, Honorable Mr. Gyanendra Bahadur Karki, to kindly ascend the stage and grace the opening ceremony as the chief guest. May I request the chair of this session, Mr. Kiran Kumar Shrestha, to kindly present this khada to the Honorable Minister as a gesture of welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in inviting the Secretary at the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Madhu Kumar Marasini, our special guest for the inaugural ceremony. A warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you indeed. And a pleasure, a privilege, in fact, of inviting one of the key personalities of this entire conference. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in inviting upon stage Dr. Bindu Nath Lohani, our keynote speaker of the inaugural session. Mr. Lohani is an accomplished expert and, as you know, the former Vice President of Asian Development Bank. It's a privilege, in fact, to be having Dr. Lohani with us today. Thank you, sir. Thank you indeed. And from the hosts to grace the stage, I have the pleasure of inviting up on stage the second Vice President of MAN, Mr. Suman Pokhrel. And now, may I request our distinguished dignitaries up on stage and all of you to kindly rise for the national anthem.
Sayuthunga fulka hami एउटै माला नेपाली सार्वभौम भई फैलिएका मेची महाकाली सायुथुङ्गा फुलका हामी एउटै माला नेपाली सार्वभौम भई फैलिएका मेची महाकाली प्रकृतिका कोटि कोटि सम्पदाको आचरा वीरहरूका रगतले स्वतन्त्र अचला ज्ञान भूमि शान्ति भूमि तराई पहाड हिमाल अखण्ड यो प्यारो हाम्रो मातृभूमि नेपाल बहु जाति भाषा धर्म संस्कृति छ विशाल अग्रगामी राष्ट्र हाम्रो जय जय नेपाल।
Thank you indeed. And may I now right away steer you all through the ceremonious task of this convergence and place my humble request to the Honorable Chief Guest to kindly descend down the stage for the ceremonious inauguration of the event. And I request our Honorable Minister to mark the ceremonious inauguration by lighting the traditional panas, ladies and gentlemen. Light, ladies and gentlemen, in our culture is signifying positivism, awakening, and knowledge, and thus the custom. Here we shall witness the formal inauguration of this convergence, this mega event under the Management Association of Nepal, to be inaugurated by our Honorable Chief Guest, the government spokesperson, Minister for Communications and Information Technology, Mr. Gyanendra Bahadur Karki. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. The WorldLink Presents CEO Conference 2022 is formally open. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you indeed. And to all the distinguished dignitaries. The maiden conference of top-notch management professionals from multiple and key economic sector comes with a very, very time-relevant theme, ladies and gentlemen. You all are very much aware. It says re-engineering management, survival, revival, growth. Now, as interesting, attractive, or convincing this may sound, execution isn't that easy. You all are aware. It's not like you just go there, press a button, and then the entire thing is redesigned. It takes a lot of things, immense knowledge, experience, expertise, the list may be long. Experts, ladies and gentlemen, they say it's more like a culture. And at times, especially in niches or transitional contexts like ours, it's extremely difficult because, again, the experts say the framework for interpreting experience is generally resistant to change. We've been experiencing this all the way. And then, again, there are various other elements working in synergy. Now, our entire deliberation today, ladies and gentlemen, will be based on a framework set around the theme that we've come to you with. And it's for you all, by the way, to find out towards the end of all these deliberations today whether the term re-engineering management that we have come up with is reinvention or it's merely evolution. And the opening session shall be key to share with you all about what to expect out of the day, ladies and gentlemen. So without further ado, allow me to link one of the important formalities of the session. My pleasure of inviting to the podium Mr. Suman Pokhrel, the second Vice President of MAN, to extend the formal welcome remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Ivaniji. Good morning. So, Chair of the inaugural session, President of Management Association of Nepal, Mr. Kiran Kumar Shrestha. Our Chief Guest, Honorable Minister for Communications and Information Technology, Mr. Gyanendra Bahadur Karki. Our special guest, Secretary of Ministry of Finance, Nepal, Mr. Madhu Kumar Marasini. Keynote Speaker, Dr. Bindu Nath Lohani. Immediate past President and past President of Management Association of Nepal. The moderators and panelists of the program, all the CEOs and senior management from private and public sector of Nepal, the member of 19th Executive Committee of Management Association of Nepal, all the life members and general members of Management Association of Nepal. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you all. Firstly, I would like to thank each of you for taking out your valuable time and joining us today for the CEO Conference 2022. We are honored to have you all with us. With immense gratitude, I announce that this is the first CEO conference organized and conducted by Management Association of Nepal in its long history. I am truly very happy to be part of this event. The theme of this conference is re-engineering management, survival, revival, and growth. This theme is about steering our business towards revival and growth in the post-pandemic arena. The conference will include panel discussions and thematic sessions under different sectors, namely tourism, technology, infrastructure, health, entrepreneurship, education, and banking and financial sector. You all know that COVID-19 waves have harshly hit almost every sector of Nepal. Though we could see robust growth in 2022 compared to 2021, supported by the monetary and fiscal stimulus, global economic recovery, and vaccinations, the slowing growth in the advanced economy, including China, intensified by the recent conflict between Russia and Ukraine, along with the disrupted trade flows and higher price of oil and other commodities are expected to push inflation and upend economic outlook of the world, and Nepal can't be an exception. The tourism and hospitality sectors are still facing difficulties to revive, as the tourist arrival are still far below the pre-pandemic level. As tourism is another harsh hit sector by the pandemic, it is one of our areas in the panel discussion today. The education sector of Nepal was gravely impacted by the multiple COVID waves and physical restriction thereof. Nepali academic sector is facing problems with sustainable infrastructure and education system, including human resources. Though the quality and status of the healthcare sector have seen an improvement, we still have a long way to go to make health service accessible to all Nepalese. With COVID-19, we saw a paradigm shift in health and education as distance learning and e-learning gained exponential growth in the last couple of years. These are the other two areas of focus for today's conference, wherein we'll collaborate to discuss and brainstorm on making effective and efficient health and education system in Nepal. Infrastructure is another area of discussion of today's conference. The economic growth of Nepal cannot be imagined without the infrastructure development, which has been affected over the long period by the unstable political situation, natural disaster, and other various reasons. At this conference, we'll try to find out the way to have a sustainable infrastructure development of the country. Furthermore, due to ongoing liquidity crisis in Nepal, the banking and financial institutions in Nepal have run out of loanable funds. Though the government and central bank are working hard to bring back the economy on track through policy intervention like import restrictions, large number of startups, SMEs and small and large entrepreneurs are severely affected. Due to this, our panel discussions are designed for discussing the current situations, identifying the scope and combating this issue through innovative and agile management strategies. Amid the challenges, the silver lining of this pandemic has been the digital transformation in Nepal. Now, more than ever, people have switched to global digital platforms. It has widened the opportunities to innovate and promote online businesses. The digital transformation we are experiencing has changed the scenario and redefined customer experience. In this light, technology is one of the key areas of focus for today's conference. It is a force that impacts all other areas and means of doing business in this new normal situation. Therefore, the major objective of CEO Conference 2022 is for the CEOs of Nepal to come together and discuss ideas for innovation in doing business for better revival and growth. The panel discussions are going to be about knowledge sharing and active engagement revolving around survival, revival, and growth under specific areas of focus. With the intent of integrating a forward-looking view and planning strategies for change, the CEO conference provides a platform and opportunity to collaborate as business leaders and design a roadmap for the future. We encourage your active participation in exchanging innovative ideas, knowledge, information, and practical approaches toward combating local issues in today's Nepalese management context. I hope that the conference will be productive and worth your precious time. Thank you very much. Once again, I'd like to thank our chief guest, the Honorable Minister of Communication and Information Technology, Mr. Gyanendra Bahadur Karki, our special guest, Secretary of Minister of Finance, Mr. Madhu Kumar Marasini, our key presenter, immediate past President of MAN, the moderators and panelists of this program, former Executive Committee member of MAN, life member and general member of MAN, 19th Executive Committee member of MAN, other guests and participants of this event for your gracious presence in this wonderful event organized by MAN. Thank you once again and have a great day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, our Vice President is also the coordinator of the Special Task Force for this event that's already underway here. And as I thank Sir one more time, let me move ahead. Lined up is the keynote speech, ladies and gentlemen. Before I introduce or invite our keynote speaker, please note that rather than just doing with some formalities of holding sessions and deliberations, we have looked to reaping something very substantive out of all the deliberations, because you can see it's reflected on the panelists, the distinguished members in the panels and moderations who represent success, leadership themselves, and they have a lot to share from their expertise and experience. And please note that in course of the past few months, we have held pre-conference sessions and also some concept advisory meeting, which have been crucial in deriving and devising the content and the course throughout the 7 sessions spread across the day today. So what we're ultimately looking forward to is reaping something substantive in black and white, something research-based or something substantive to be submitted to the policymakers. So that's why we all are looking forward to your very proactive participation. Said that, ladies and gentlemen, let me now steer you to the most important part, one of the most important part of this inauguration session, that is the keynote presentation, which will be, is an effort to explain to you the theme, re-engineering management, survival, revival, and growth. That's what the conference is dwelling on. And my pleasure and privilege, ladies and gentlemen, now to invite the keynote speaker, Dr. Bindu Nath, who is the former Asian Development Bank's vice president and was in charge of ADB's Departments of Economic Research and Regional Cooperation, Sustainable Development and Climate Change, and Information Systems and Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, please join our hands as I welcome Dr. Lohani to the podium. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, the President of MAN, Secretary of the Finance, dear friend of mine, ladies and gentlemen, especially today the CEOs, it's a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to be invited to share a few views that I have on some of the issues that you are likely to discuss today. The topic, engineering management, survival, revival, and growth, I think is timely, but we probably need to look at this issue even over a longer term perspective. I used to be a member of MAP. This is the Management Association of the Philippines. This is my first interaction with MAN. Very happy that we have a very, very active MAN in Nepal. But this is my first time to get to know you on this one. Most of my life has been in the global and the regional issues. So I will try to look at this theme today from that perspective and see whether they will be and how much of these will be relevant to the local conditions. In the context of the local situations, you all know it better than me, so I also take this as a learning session for me. If I had to pick about 3 big global issues, priorities, crisis, challenges today, I would pick the following 3. Of course, the first, the COVID pandemic, its impact on just about everything, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. Second, the sustainability, climate change issues. Every country has committed that they will go for carbon neutral world by 2050. In the case of Nepal, we have committed by 2045. This is a challenge. This is also an opportunity. The third, the global turbulences. We see the geopolitical conflicts, alliances, impacting on the economy, impacting on the financial systems, and shifting the country, alliances, all of those. So all of these become very relevant issues for the CEOs today also become very relevant for the countries. Now, these global concerns are definitely creating regional and local concerns. That requires companies, CEOs on one hand, on the other hand, the countries as a whole will require to address them in several ways. Now, let me today pick about 5 ways that we could probably do that. I've been mostly in the global companies, in the global boards, and what I see them doing is they all are rethinking, revisiting their strategies, both in the medium term as well as in the long term. They all are doing that. And I sit in some of the board, I see them doing that. Engineering business process and making adjustment to that. That's the basic that we could do. And CEOs have a lot of authority to do that on their own. Making changes beyond re-engineering, changes which are transformational, really significant changes which they hadn't seen in the past. Fourth, the opportunities for new growth. There are new growth areas in the world today where we do have opportunities. And finally, many of the companies that at least I've seen in the US in one of the board, I said, they see this as an opportunity to really get to the next level of businesses in future. And I'll come to that a little later. Now, we don't need to talk a lot about the COVID-19. Everybody knows about it. But one thing we know that it had impacted quite a bit. In 2001, myself with a few other experts, Nepalese expert, and the Silicon Valley people who are doing the global thinking, we created a document called Strategy for Making Nepal Stronger and Resilient. Of course, it'll have the impact, but then we were thinking not of the immediate action that you would need as relief and etc., but what could be how could you look long term? And in that publications, we look at the impact of the pandemic on various key economic sectors. Now, you will know this, that there was some net positive impact, net positive. And the companies who work on health, I'm talking globally, chemicals, materials, personal care, ICT, agriculture, and energy, they all had positive net impact of COVID. The ones which had the negative impact, of course, which we know in Nepal very well, the tourism and the leisure, the aviation, the mobility, construction, manufacturing, banking, financial services, education sector, the areas which the CEO conference has picked rightly, in my opinion. Now, in that publication, we also looked at specifically some Nepal-related concern, like tourism. I think if I remember, the secretary would know better, contributes about 7 to 8% to the GDP. So it's a very significant sector. The manufacturing, regrettably, is a bit small here, 5%. They were affected the most, which we know. But agriculture, which is about close to 30% of the GDP maybe, but 70% of people employed, they were affected very low. Now we know the reasons for that. Now, we also interviewed many of the companies in Nepal, and what came out from the survey was nearly half, about 50% of the business owners in Nepal have seen their revenues drop, which is, but you knew this, but about 50% of the companies admitted to that. Almost a very significant amount of the companies said they had problem with the workforce and cash flow, which also is not surprising. Many firms expected, almost 47% of the companies in Nepal expected that, can you hear this? There's some vibration here, that the banks will help them. Even the central bank would help them. I don't know how much of that happened, how much that could not happen. We know the story very well. And majority of the companies also had a problem with the workforce issues, which again we know. Now, against this background, the survival, revival, and growth becomes very important. That's why this topic, I say, is very, very timely. Now, I say this, that conquering the crisis requires actions with strategic imperatives. Now, this is a word we use globally, strategic imperatives. Now, what does that mean? Such actions need to be highly leveraged on one hand and be systemic, that's to me strategic, and should be must-do commitments which are imperatives. So action need to be taken in a manner where the strategic imperatives becomes a driving force for achieving the aspiration on one hand, and other hand, transforming to address the impact for the future. I mean, this is a concept we utilize quite a bit in some global companies. Now, what can you do when you have a crisis like that? I saw the Asian financial crisis, I saw the tsunami crisis, and a few others in Asia-Pacific region. It always has about 3 phases. First, the response phase. When something happens like earthquake, you keep on responding. You don't think anything like that. Immediate actions to mitigate the losses or the impact. I think we've just about done that for the crisis of the COVID. Then you try to reset the economy, phase number 2. Recover to return to the same normal if you can. If not, you go to a new normal. I think most people think we may have a new normal, right? And I think we have done quite a bit of that, but we're still a little bit on that. And the third phase will be to rebound, build the growth pipeline to accelerate the growth strategy. And I think this is what we need to do. We haven't done much yet, and many companies globally are doing this. I wouldn't say all of them have completed the job. Now, the options that we have, of course, the re-engineering business, which we said, you can change the business processes, but this is hard, but it must be done. But normally, if you go to the business school and take your textbook, normally say, business process re-engineering, you got to do once in a while regularly. But we forget to do this. And we wait until the crisis to happen, and I hope we don't forget. I hope the CEOs don't forget that we wait for the next crisis to do the business process. I think I have forgotten also in the past myself that I said, okay, it's all done, and I'll wait for the next crisis. I hope the COVID has taught us a lesson that we need to do this before the crisis come to us. I've also seen in my lifetime many re-engineering management projects failed. And I'll pick only 3 today. I got about a list of 10, but I will pick 3. One, most of the time, it failed because the organization inadvertently, not knowingly, adopted a flawed or incomplete re-engineering strategy. I've seen this happen many times. Too quickly, you start thinking this is it. Right? The second, we often are tied to our old thinking, old processes. This worked before. The technology, we saw tied to the technologies. And I think this has been sometimes the reason for failure. And third, most of the time the management forgets to make a long-term commitment. Okay, the crisis is not only this crisis, we got to think about the next 10 years, and which we forget. I won't tell the other reasons. So, we all agree the COVID is changing the business practices in and out. The workplace practices have changed, digital e-commerce has changed, education has changed, health services, the way we do has been changed, travels have changed, et cetera, et cetera. So against this light, in one of the global study, where I was partly involved, we asked the CEOs, globally, this is global data, and 90% of these CEOs believe that the COVID-19 crisis will fundamentally change the way we will do the business in the next 5 to 10 years. And this crisis presents, they also say, most of them said that this crisis presents an opportunity to not only innovate, but also leverage the same for a profitable future. This is the CEO's global thinking. I think this should also be applicable here. But history suggests that organization, I saw this during the financial crisis. When I was the Vice President of Finance, I had this job for the Asia-Pacific region. I saw these organizations that invested in innovation during the time of crisis outperformed quite a bit. So this, again, a lesson that we probably could keep our mind. Now, talking about the opportunity for growth, again, globally, if you look at it, 70% of the CEOs think the areas where we can make a lot of money, where growth will be, one, the technology, consumer packaged goods, medical, financial service, healthcare, and communication service. These are the areas they think are, and then in one of the companies that I'm sitting in, they're making a lot of investment in these, thinking that we're going to make a lot of windfall profit in the future. This has also given us an opportunity to think, where are the new growth opportunities? Now, one area that I think, in which I work quite a bit, is in the green economy. There's a lot of money, $100 billion committed by the donors to be given to the countries for climate change, green investment, and so on. I think there's also lots of grants money. The Secretary of Finance knows all of this. We haven't tapped enough. I think there's a huge potential to tap this free money available there, turn them into the green business. The other area where I see is lots of potential, because we have a young population, smart young people, is in the digital space, sharpening the focus on digital technologies. I read one document, I liked it, Digital Nepal Framework Report. And it says one nation, 8 sectors. It includes all the sectors that CEOs are going to discuss here today, health, education, et cetera, et cetera. And it says 800 activities that we could undertake. And it says it has the potential to create new wealth of 800 billion rupees. Now that would be what, close to about 2%? I don't know, close to about 2% of the GDP, which is a lot. In a time of crisis when there's a negative global growth, 2% is a lot. So this is one area where I think we have a lot of potential. Now in this CEO conference, I look at, you have 7 areas. Now in my 50 years of life in the Asia Pacific region, I had worked in most of these areas. I feel like commenting long on these, but we don't have the time. But nonetheless, I will mention 1 or 2 in each sector. That really, very hard to do that. Pick 1 or 2 is very difficult than picking 10. One of the things that is missing in the discussion, I think, is the sustainability issue. You can't get away from the sustainability, climate change, and sustainable development issue. Anything you do in any of the sectors, we have to keep that in mind. This is required. Now, if you look at the 50 years of Asia's development, you will find all of these sectors were very important in their development, in their country's development. Priorities, investment in infrastructure, energy, transport, water, investment in digital technology, investment in education, skilled Tibet education, health, FDI not only for money. Sometimes I think the discussion I read in the press is FDI means bringing money. Most of the Asian countries not only brought money, they didn't want just money, they wanted technology and knowledge with it, so that you can upgrade your investment and thinking, so you could be competitive with the others in future. Now, I'd like to say 1 or 2 words only, because time doesn't permit, on each of these sectors, because I work on all of the infrastructure. If you look at the Asia-Pacific region, the infrastructure investment in Nepal is the lowest. Lowest. I mean, compared to any other Asian countries, which also means that if you do not invest in infrastructure, the poverty reduction, it has direct relationship with poverty reduction, direct with the GDP growth. So I think we have a lot to do. This is we know, but we need to do more. But the way we do infrastructure has to be different. It's no longer brick and mortar. It's not only steel and iron or cement and concrete. It is doing infrastructure that will have an impact on the beneficiaries, whether it will have reduce the poverty, reduce the GDP, will help the tourism, will help the energy sector. It has to be a infrastructure development with a purpose. It has to bring in new technology and quality. I have to say this, it hurts me. I haven't seen, except for a few hotels, I haven't seen iconic infrastructure like you see in Asia-Pacific region here. What is the iconic bridge here? What is the iconic building here? Maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. You need to climate-proof every infrastructure. This is And we need to do financial engineering, not only look for the budget from the Ministry of Finance. He has already got a difficult job. How do we leverage that money with the private sector? I prepared a report with the CNI on this, found out that the private sector investment in infrastructure is next to zero. I won't say that, this is probably too negative, maybe very low. Because whereas I see in the energy sector in Asia-Pacific region is about 50%, ICT much more. We need to have more private sector engagement to leverage the budget which the government provides. Education. My favorite on the education is, since I was a professor once for 10 years at the Asian Institute of Technology, quality, quality, quality. If we can arrest these people going for undergraduate education in the other countries, just the undergraduate, we save a lot of money. And this is doable. This is doable by linking with the university, participating with the other universities, and in the Asia-Pacific region, they have done it. 30, 40 years ago, they all used to send the students outside. Now they can do at least the undergraduate themselves. And get the TVET skilled people who will be available at home and also for outside. In the banking financial sector, a lot of expertise here, I won't comment, but something that I feel, and I hope I'm wrong on this, maybe we have too many banks. I think that's and too small maybe sometimes. If you have to fund a $300 million project, I don't know how many banks could do this. So we need to think of this from that perspective. I think the role of the government becomes important. Say, how do we help them to make a bigger pie in that business? And that is, and secondly, I also see that many of the companies, again, I hope I'm wrong here, because local condition I know less, too dependent on banks, or over-dependent on banks. And that is also a stretch on one hand to the bank. On the other hand, we're not exploring the debt capital market, which we've been saying for a long time. And we have seen this happen in the Asia-Pacific region in a very good way. Now, I won't talk in the other sectors. I have something on the health that I would like to say, which is, in the COVID time, I couldn't go for a health check anywhere else except I had to do it locally. So I hope if we can do all treatment, most treatment locally, that would be a big plus to the economy, number one. I also am a strong believer that the poor people always suffer, so if we have a universal health insurance system somehow done, it'll be a very good thing to do for the country. Right? I would like to make sure, my dream someday before I die, that most people Nepalese will not go to Bangkok, to Bumrungrad, or to Medanta or Apollo to treatment. I'll say, I'll just go to the hospitals here in Nepal. That's my wish list. Hope it happens while I'm alive. And now I don't want to talk much more on these sectors. I may join some of the group. It is really interesting for me. Now, globally, therefore, to conclude, you know, we look at many priorities globally. I talk about the global turbulence as my third issue. On that, I would mention only three things that we notice globally. One, the biggest concern is inflation globally and the interest rate. It's also true. I think everything has gone up. And what we can blame is because of the energy prices, because of the war, or it is because of the supply chain management sector, whatever it is a very big issue. The second thing that is worrying globally is the supply chain management, supply chain delivery. There's a lot of disruption that happened during COVID. So what companies are doing at the moment is, in the past, when you make an iPhone, you could get parts from Mexico to other places and assemble in China. Today, they are thinking, which will be my closest neighbor, closest country from which I can get it? Because the disruption is too wide because of the COVID. You had a lot of disruption. So they are looking for closer proximity for the supply chain, which means the price could increase too, and the availability might take some time. And the third issue, once again, I say this again, is sustainability and climate change issue, which becomes really, really important because we need to live in this earth. 1.5 degree has been promised. Today we are in the track for 4 to 5 degrees centigrade. I think we may not see 1.5, but we want to make sure our next generation sees a 1.5 degree world. That's 2050. By 2050, I'm gone. I'm not in but I want to see this happen for the others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you indeed for these expert statements and insightful inputs and sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very much confident that this keynote has certainly added a lot of clarity towards what we are expecting, what sort of content we're expecting from the proceedings of the day. Now, without further ado, I wish to move forward. And before I move forward, allow me to apprise that owing to the presence of some valued non-Nepali speaking audience, in the members in the audience, we chose to deliver or facilitate the event in English. However, I apprise our distinguished guests to feel free to use either English or Nepali in their delivery. Said that, ladies and gentlemen, we will now be hearing from our distinguished dignitaries seated at the dais. First and foremost, my pleasure to invite our special guest, the Secretary at the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Madhu Kumar Marasini.
Thank you very much. I was complaining to Shivaniji, Angrezima bol bhane, and I know her, that's why I sorry ke chaina. Sabai Nepali dekheko छु त्यही भएर मैले चाहिँ उल्लङ्घन गर्छु अलिकति. उल्लङ्घन नगरिकन इनोभेसन पनि हुँदैन जस्तो लाग्छ फेरि है. त्यही भएर पनि सरी. आजको यो सीईओ कन्फरेन्सका अध्यक्षता गरिरहनु भएका राष्ट्रिय वाणिज्य बैंकका सीईओ किरण श्रेष्ठजी, आजका समारोहका प्रमुख अतिथि माननीय सूचना तथा सञ्चार प्रविधि मन्त्री ज्ञानेन्द्र बहादुर कार्कीज्यू, अत्यन्त आदरणीय अग्रज एसियाली विकास बैंकका पूर्व भाइस प्रेसिडेन्ट बिन्दु नाथ लोहनीज्यू, डेस्मा आसीन म्यानका सिनियर भाइस प्रेसिडेन्ट सुमन पोखरेलज्यू र मैले तल देखिरहेको छु हाम्रो विभिन्न सङ्घ संस्थाहरूको नेतृत्व गरिरहनुभएका सम्पूर्ण सीईओ साहेबहरू, म्याडमहरू र सबै यो हाम्रो बिजनेस कम्युनिटीसँग र आजको यो समारोहमा आबद्ध हुनुभएका विभिन्न सङ्घ संस्थाका प्रतिनिधिज्यूहरू, महिला तथा सज्जनवृन्द, पत्रकार मित्रहरू, नमस्कार, शुभ प्रभात, गुड मर्निङ। आज मलाई खुसी पनि लागिरहेछ यसको टपिक्स हेर्दैखेरि पनि मलाई एकदम खुसी लाग्यो। Re-engineering management, survival, revival and growth. I think it was the management that and it was the CEOs actually who took risks of investing in innovation, and that gave us the much needed COVID vaccines, right? So I'd like to remember those CEOs of Pfizer, Moderna, and whatnot, all Veroshel and other companies, that took risks to produce the vaccines, and that allows such a large gathering like this one. So we should salute those CEOs. यस्तै CEOहरू हुनुहुन्छ जसले टेक्नोलोजीमा पनि फड्को मार्न सिकाउनु भएको छ। एलोन मस्कदेखि लिएर अब धेरै हुनुहुन्छ, मैले मार्क जुकरबर्गदेखि लिएर धेरै, अब कति धेरैको नाम लिउँ, त्यो सबैले हाम्रो लाइफ कति कम्फर्टेबल बनाइदिनु भएको छ। र वास्तवमा अहिले हेऱ्यौँ भने भनिन्छ मानव इतिहासको लगभग हामीले 70,000 वर्ष अगाडि अफ्रिकाबाट सँगै छोडेको भन्ने एउटा अहिलेसम्मको पर्याप्त तथ्याङ्क पनि छ, हिस्ट्री पनि छ, धेरैले पढ्नु पनि भएको छ होला। तर त्योभन्दा पनि अलिकति व्यवस्थित हाम्रो जनजीवन भएको 10 वर्ष अगाडि, खेती किसानी सुरु भएको 10,000 वर्ष अगाडि, खेती किसानी सुरु भएको 5,000 वर्ष अगाडि, र त्यो 5,000 वर्ष अगाडिदेखि समुदायमा बस्ने र खेती किसानी सुरु भएदेखि लगभग सन् 1750 सम्म हाम्रो लाइफ स्ट्यान्डर्ड उस्तै थियो। तर त्यसपछिको इनोभेसनले, त्यसपछिको इन्डस्ट्रियलाइजेसनले, त्यसपछि कम्पनीजहरू सेट भएर तिनीहरूले लिएको रिस्क र च्यालेन्जले गर्दाखेरि लगभग 200-250 वर्षमा सन् 2000 सम्म आउँदाखेरिको त्यो हाम्रो ह्युमन लाइफको चेन्ज प्याटर्न, हाम्रो लिभिङ स्ट्यान्डर्डको चेन्ज, र सँगसँगै जब यो इन्टरनेटको भनौँ न यसको चाहिँ जब जुन खालको इनोभेसन, यसका विभिन्न किसिमका चाहिँ इन्भेन्सनहरू भयो, त्यसपछिको 20-25 वर्ष हेर्दाखेरि यति धेरै चेन्ज, यति धेरै पोजिटिभ चेन्जहरू आइरहेको छ कि वास्तवमा इन्टरप्राइजिङको महत्त्व, सिइओहरूले कसरी लिड गर्नुपर्ने रहेछ भन्ने महत्त्व र म्यानेजमेन्टले कसरी आफूलाई रिइन्जिनियर गर्नुपर्ने रहेछ, कसरी चेन्ज गर्नुपर्ने रहेछ र कसरी चाहिँ समयको माग अनुसार आफूलाई चाहिँ त्यो समयको चाहनाको डेलिभरी गर्न तयार गर्नुपर्ने रहेछ भन्ने कुरा त्यसको ज्वलन्त उदाहरण पनि दिएको छ। त्यसले गर्दाखेरि पनि तपाईँहरूले जुन खालको आज यो टाइटल तपाईँहरूले राख्नु भएको छ, मलाई आई वाज सो ह्याप्पी टु सी दिस टाइटल। एक्चुअली यति समसामयिक त हुनै सक्दैन। थ्याङ्क यू फर चुजिङ द्याट टाइटल एज वेल। एकदमै राम्रो लाग्यो। अब सर्भाइभल मैले भनिहालेँ, त्यो खोपको इन्भेन्सन भइसकेपछि र नेपाल सरकारले वर्तमान प्रधानमन्त्री आइसकेपछि यहाँहरूले सुन्नु पनि भयो होला, कमन मिनिमम प्रोग्राममै पनि सरकारको 3टा प्राथमिकता भनेको थियो, खोप, खोप र खोप, होइन? यो 3टा प्राथमिकता भनेर खोपको सबैलाई चाहिँ हामीले प्रबन्ध गरिसकेपछि वान अफ द रिजन्स हामी यसरी लार्ज ग्यादरिङ बस्दैछौँ, ह्यापनिङ्सहरू हुँदैछ, होइन? यत्रो सबै चिजहरू हाम्रो चाहिँ इकोनोमी पुरा डाइनामिक रूपमा अगाडि बढिरहेछ, रिओपन भइरहेछ, होइन? त्यसले गर्दा सर्भाइभलमा चाहिँ यसले धेरै हामीलाई हेल्प गर्यो, है? सर्भाइभलमा हेल्प गरिसकेपछि अब अहिलेको हाम्रो आजको अवस्था भनेको हामीले कोभिडको पिरियडमा लस भएको हाम्रो इकोनोमिक गेन अथवा लस भएको हाम्रो ह्याप्पिनेस, लस भएको त्यो हाम्रो अपर्च्युनिटिजहरूलाई रिगेन गर्नु पनि छ, रिभाइभ गर्नु पनि छ। त्यो कसरी देखिन्छ भन्दा त्यो मार्गमा हामी लागि पनि रहेछौँ। त्यो कसरी पनि देखिन्छ भन्दा करिब 1.5 देखि 2 वर्षसम्मको हाम्रो बन्दाबन्दीको इकोनोमिक अवस्था एकैचोटि वात्त खुल्दाखेरि जुन किसिमले हाम्रो इकोनोमिक एक्टिभिटिजहरू अगाडि बढिरहेछ, त्यो हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ वास्तवमै हामी रिभाइभलको स्टेजमा प्रवेश गरिसकेको भन्ने पनि जगजाहेर नै छ। त्यो रिभाइभलको स्टेजमा प्रवेश गरिसकेपछि हाम्रा डिमान्डहरू एकैचोटि हामीले फुलफिल गर्न लायौँ। डिमान्डहरू फुलफिल गर्न लाइसकेपछि माग धेरै भइसकेपछि हाम्रो खर्च गर्ने प्रवृत्ति बढ्यो। खर्च गर्ने प्रवृत्ति बढिसकेपछि हाम्रो देशमा अनफर्चुनेटली स्वदेशी उत्पादन नहुँदाखेरि आयात बढ्यो। आयात बढिसकेपछि अहिले अलिकति हामीलाई एक्सटर्नल सेक्टरको प्रेसर छ। त्यो प्रेसर भनेको के हो भन्दाखेरि फर गुड हाम्रो इकोनोमी चाहिँ रिभाइभ हुँदाखेरिको एउटा गुड कोर्स करेक्सनमा जाँदाखेरिको प्रेसर हो त्यो। अब यहाँ त पुरा श्रीलङ्का हुन लाग्यो कि कहाँ हुन लाग्यो भने क्राइसिसको रूपमा व्याख्या भइरहेछ, विच इज भेरी रङ। र तपाईँहरूले पनि मलाई लाग्छ यहाँ यत्रो विद्वत वर्गहरू हुनुहुन्छ, तपाईँहरूले पनि यो कुराको अलिकति केयरफुल चाहिँ आफ्नो एनालाइसिस गर्नुहुन्छ होला। मैले किन पनि त्यो भनिरहेको छु भने हो इकोनोमी अलिकति ओभर हिटेड भइरहेछ। हाम्रो क्रेडिट चाहिँ हामीले 19-20% राख्छौँ भनेको थियो, ओभरअल अलिक 32%सम्म पनि पुग्यो। त्यो कारणले लिक्विडिटीमा अलिकति प्रेसर पर्यो। बट के हामी कन्टिन्युअसली तपाईँको पैसा चाहिँ के अरे लेन्ड गरे गर्न सक्छौँ र? डु यु वान्ट टु इन्भाइट 2008 फाइनेन्सियल क्राइसिस? आर वी रेडी फर द्याट? क्यान आवर कन्ट्री बियर द्याट लस, द्याट टाइप अफ क्राइसिस? नो वे, होइन? त्यसले गर्दा अहिले अलिकति हामीहरू प्रेसरको अवस्थामा छौँ। तर यो प्रेसर केले क्रिएट भएको भन्दाखेरि फर गुड रिभाइभलको कारणले गर्दाखेरि केही प्रेसर क्रिएट भएको हो। तर त्यस्तो एकदमै तर्सिनुपर्ने, श्रीलङ्कासँग दाज्नुपर्ने केही नै छैन। आजको मितिमा पनि नेपाल राष्ट्र ब्याङ्कमा 1171 अरबको फरेक्स रिजर्भ छ, जबकि यो वर्ष हामीले तिर्नुपर्ने फरेन लोनको इन्ट्रेस्ट र प्रिन्सिपल भनेको जम्मा 40 अरब हो। अनि हामी कहाँबाट श्रीलङ्कासँग दाज्न मिल्छ? हामीसँग 1171 अरब रुपियाँ अहिले छ। हामीले यो वर्ष तिर्नुपर्ने फरेन लोन र तपाईँको त्यसको इन्ट्रेस्ट भनेको 40 अरब रुपियाँ छ। है त्यसैले हो हामीलाई इम्पोर्टमा प्रेसर छ। हामीले धेरै लग्जरी आइटमहरू आयात गरिरहेछौँ, नचाहिने चिज पनि आयात भयो। अलिक खुलापनको अलिक बढी चाहिँ हामीले बढी नै उपयोग गरिरहेछौँ। त्यसमा चाहिँ कन्टेन गर्नुपर्ने छ। मलाई लाग्छ त्यो विषयमा हाम्रो ब्याङ्क एन्ड फाइनेन्सियल इन्स्टिट्युसन्सहरू अहिले धेरै नै उहाँहरू आफैले पनि त्यो विषयलाई अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड गर्नुभएको छ र केही स्ट्राटेजिक कदमहरू चाल्नु भएको छ। अदरवाइज हामी अरू देशसँग अलि बिग्रेको इकोनोमीसँग कम्पेयर गर्नुपर्ने अवस्थामा छैनौँ। त्यो कुरा चाहिँ क्लियर हौँ। हाम्रो रेभिन्यू अहिले पनि जिडिपीको 23% छ। त्यो भनेको साउथ एसियाका त सबै कन्ट्रीभन्दा हाइएस्ट नै हो। मेनी एसियन कन्ट्रिजभन्दा पनि हाम्रो राम्रो हो। त्यसले गर्दा रेभिन्यूको बेस पनि हाम्रो ठिकै छ। हामीले जुन किसिमले अरू देशहरूले अन्नेसरी चाहिँ बरो गरेर आफ्नो देशमा चाहिँ देशको डेट बर्डन चाहिँ अलिक बढी गरिरहेछ, त्यो अवस्थामा पनि हामी छैनौँ। हामीले मोस्टली मल्टिल्याटरल इन्स्टिट्युसन्सहरू छ जसको 40 वर्षको गेस्टेसन पिरियडहरू हुन्छ, जसको इन्ट्रेस्ट रेट 0.1%देखि बिलो 1%सम्म हुन्छ। त्यस्तो लोनहरू छ गभर्मेन्टले लिएको भने पनि, त्यसैले त्यस्तरी आत्तिएर अब क्रिएट गर्नुपर्ने छैन, तर केयरफुल हुनुपर्ने अवस्था पनि छ। किनभने स्वदेशी उत्पादन नहुँदाखेरि हामी केयरफुल हुनुपर्ने अवस्था छ, हामीलाई अलिकति स्ट्रेस परेको अवस्था छ। हाम्रो चाहिँ खर्च धेरै भएको, स्वदेशमा उत्पादन नभएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि इम्पोर्टमा धेरै गएको छ। इम्पोर्टमा जाने भनेको हामीले अर्को देशको इकोनोमीलाई कन्ट्रिब्युट गरिरहेको छौँ, हामीले तिरेको पैसाबाट अथवा हाम्रो रेयर मनीबाट। हाम्रो दाजुभाइहरूले श्रम गरेर खाडी लगायतका मुलुकबाट पठाएको हार्ड अर्न रेमिट्यान्स अर्को देशको इकोनोमीलाई हामीले कन्ट्रिब्युट गरेका छौँ। अब हामी यो सबै सिओ साहबहरूलाई मेरो एउटा अनुरोध पनि के हो भने, अब तपाईँहरूले हाम्रो सबैको फोकस चाहिँ स्वदेशी उत्पादनमा कसरी वृद्धि ल्याउने र कसरी चाहिँ एक खालको आत्मनिर्भर अर्थतन्त्र निर्माण गर्ने। बेसिक चिजहरू पनि भएन हो, स्किल ल्याउनुपर्छ, टेक्नोलोजी पनि ल्याउनुपर्छ, इनोभेसन ल्याउनुपर्छ। त्यो भनेको यहाँ एउटा चाहिँ फेरि क्लोज सोसाइटी हुनुपर्छ भनेको पनि होइन, ल्याउनुपर्छ। तर बेसिक निड्सको आइटमहरू यहाँ खेतबारी बाँझो राखेर अथवा यहाँ लगाउने हाम्रो के अरे कपडा उद्योगहरू बन्द गरेर छन् नि यहाँको इन्टरप्राइजहरू। मैले भर्खर कलेज पढ्दाखेरि पनि एकदम ब्राइटर टुथपेस्ट भनेर आउँथ्यो मजाले, हामी यहीँको साबुन यहीँको थियो बेसिक निड्सको आइटमहरू हामीले यहीँ गरिरहेको थियौँ। त्यस्तोमा प्रमोट गर्नु पर्यो। र मेरो चाहिँ साथीहरूलाई मेरो अनुरोध पनि छ, स्वदेशी उत्पादनलाई प्रवर्धन गर्ने, यहीँ बिजनेस खोल्ने, यहीँ इन्टरप्राइजहरू डेभलप हुने, यहीँको चाहिँ कृषि क्षेत्रहरू प्रवर्धन हुने, यहीँको स्मल एन्ड मिडियम स्केल इन्टरप्राइजहरू प्रवर्धन हुने खालको एरियातिर लगानी गर्नेले पनि त्यो गरौँ, इनोभेसन गर्नेहरूले पनि त्यो खालको बिजनेसहरू खोल्यौँ भने यहाँ प्रशस्त अपर्च्युनिटी छ। अहिले हाइड्रो पावरमा हामी धेरै नै अगाडि बढिसकेका छौँ। धेरै अगाडि बर्खामा त हाम्रो गएको बर्खा 500 मेगावाट त खेर नै गयो। तर अनफर्चुनेटली अहिले पनि पर क्यापिटा हाम्रो चाहिँ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कन्जम्सन भनेको 250 केभिए जति मात्रै छ पर आवर। त्यो भनेको एकदमै साउथ एसियामा पनि लो हो। इन्डियाकै 1200 छ, इन्डियाकै 1200 छ, हाम्रो जम्मा 250 केभिए छ। तपाईँ हेर्नुहोस् न कति त्यो हाम्रो जनजीवन त होला, इन्डियाको अहिले इकोनोमिक ग्रोथ हाम्रोभन्दा केही अगाडि होला, तर जनजीवन हेऱ्यो भने त हाम्रो लाइफस्टाइल उस्तै त हो। भन्नुको मतलब यहीँभित्र पनि हामीले त्यो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कन्जम्सन गर्ने धेरै कुराहरू छ जुन हामीले गरिरहेको छैनौँ। त्यतातिर जाउँ, इकोनोमीलाई आत्मनिर्भर बनाऊ, हाम्रो भएको रिसोर्सलाई उपयोग गऱ्यौँ भने हाम्रो रिभाइभल भनेको कुनै पनि किसिमले टाढा पनि छैन। इकोनोमी रिभाइभ हुने पाथमा छ। अलिकति इम्पोर्ट कन्टेन गर्नुपर्ने छ, अलिकति हार्ड अर्न त्यो फरेक्स रिजर्भलाई चाहिँ अलिकति माया गर्नुपर्ने अवस्था छ र त्यो गर्न पनि सकिन्छ। अब तेस्रो कुरा तपाईँहरूले ग्रोथमा कुरा गर्नुभयो। ग्रोथको यसपालि ग्रोथ हुने भनेको त त्यही त होला, इकोनोमिक एजिलिटी बढेर हुने होला, इकोनोमिक एक्टिभिटिजहरू एक्सपान्सन भएर हुने होला। हाम्रो इकोनोमीको जिडिपीको कम्पोजिसन हेऱ्यो भने पनि 70% इज कन्ट्रिब्युटेड बाई द प्राइभेट सेक्टर, र प्राइभेट सेक्टर अहिले एकदमै मोबाइल भइरहेछ, डाइनामिक रूपमा अगाडि बढिरहेछ। तपाईँहरूले उद्योग विभागको तथ्याङ्क हेर्नुहोस्, कम्पनी रजिस्ट्रार कार्यालयको तथ्याङ्क हेर्नुहोस्, अथवा आन्तरिक राजस्व कार्यालयको तथ्याङ्क हेर्नुहोस्, गएका वर्षहरूभन्दा हामी कहाँ कम्पनीहरू दर्ता हुने क्रम पनि बढिरहेछ। गएको वर्षहरूभन्दा नयाँ उद्योगहरू दर्ता हुने क्रम पनि बढिरहेछ। र राष्ट्र ब्याङ्कले केही महिना अगाडि गरेको एउटा स्टडीले कोभिडको अगाडि जुन उद्योग धन्दाहरू बन्द भएको थिए 98% उद्योगहरू चाहिँ रिज्युम भएको चाहिँ राष्ट्र ब्याङ्कको स्टडीले पनि देखाएको छ। भनेको त अब के छ भने हामी एकदम रिभाइभ हुँदैछौँ, हामी ग्रोथको मार्गमा लागिरहेछौँ। त्यसलाई चाहिँ त्यो ग्रोथको न्यारेटिभलाई अलिकति कन्टिन्यू गर्नुपर्ने च्यालेन्ज हामीसँग छ। त्यो च्यालेन्जमा हामीलाई एक्सटर्नल फ्याक्टरले अलिकति चाहिँ हाम्रो खुट्टा अलिकति पुल गरिरहेछ। कसरी पुल गरिरहेछ? एक त यो 1.5-2 वर्षको लकडाउनले गर्दाखेरि सप्लाई चेन काओसदेखि लिएर धेरै कुराहरू इन्टरनेसनल कन्डिसन्सहरूले धेरै हामीलाई चाहिँ अप्ठ्यारोहरू पारिरहेको थियो। त्यसमाथि अहिले रुस र युक्रेनको युद्धले गर्दाखेरि पनि हाम्रो हाउस होल्ड, हाम्रो किचन नै महँगो हुन पुगिरहेछ। अनि हामी सबै अब फ्युल हामी इम्पोर्ट गर्छौँ, फुड ग्रेन्सहरू पनि हामी इम्पोर्ट गर्छौँ, जुन चिज त्यो क्षेत्रबाट आउँथ्यो। त्यसले गर्दाखेरि अलिकति हार्डसिप भइरहेछ। त्यो हार्डसिप भनेको बियोन्ड गभर्मेन्ट कन्ट्रोल पनि छ कतिपय कुराहरू, त्यो हिसाबमा पनि बुझ्नु पऱ्यो। तर यसको अर्थ यो होइन कि इट्स अनम्यानेजेबल। हामीले म्यानेज गर्दै पनि छौँ, म्यानेज गर्नु पनि सक्छौँ, गर्नु पनि पर्छ। र त्यो म्यानेज गर्ने सिलसिलामा केही कुराहरू स्याक्रिफाइस पनि गर्नुपर्छ। त्यो स्याक्रिफाइस भनेको अलिकति स्वदेश केन्द्रित हुनलाई स्याक्रिफाइस गर्ने हो। हाम्रो सस्टेनेबल डेभलपमेन्टको लागि सेक्रिफाइस गर्ने हो। त्यो मामलामा चाहिँ अलिकति यहाँहरू मार्फत त्यो मेसेजहरू पनि, किनभने यु आर द लिडर्स। मैले त 30% मात्रै हो गभर्मेन्टले चाहिँ वास्तवमा भन्यो इकोनोमीमा, मेरो रोल गभर्मेन्टको रोल 30% हो। तपाईहरुले जता ड्राइभ गर्नुहुन्छ नि 70%ले तान्छ होला नि त, हैन र? तपाईहरुले जता ड्राइभ गर्नुहुन्छ त्यही जान्छ सोसाइटीमा, मेसेज पनि त्यही जान्छ, इन्भेन्सन पनि त्यही जान्छ, इनोभेसन त्यही हुन्छ। हो, हामीले कन्ड्युसिभ इन्भाइरोमेन्ट दिनुपर्छ, तपाईलाई सेक्युरिटी दिनुपर्छ, तपाईहरुको प्रोपर्टी राइटहरू चाहिँ प्रोटेक्सन गरिदिनुपर्छ, रुल अफ ल मेन्टेन गरिदिनुपर्छ, पिस दिनुपर्छ। त्यसको लागि कहाँ के छ ऐन नियम कानुनहरू बिजनेस फ्रेन्डली गराइदिनुपर्छ। त्यसको लागि हामीलाई प्रेसर दिनुस्, तपाईहरुले औँलाइदिनुस्। गभर्मेन्टले यहाँ त्रुटि गर्यो, हामीले यस्तो खालको रुल्स रेगुलेसनहरू चाहिन्छ भन्नुस्, तर यु लिड द इकोनोमी, यु आर द लिडर्स। म्यानको यो कन्फरेन्स भएको कारणले यु आर लिडिङ अल्सो, तपाईहरु लिड गर्ने हो। हामीलाई चाहिँ कस्तो खालको चाहिँ इन्भाइरोमेन्ट बनाइदिन गभर्मेन्टबाट के खालको रुल्स रेगुलेसनहरू चाहिने हो, त्यो विषयमा चाहिँ हामीलाई बारम्बार घचघचाइदिनु होला। र मलाई लाग्छ यो रुममा जो उपस्थित हुनुहुन्छ यही नै हो नेपाल चलाउने मान्छेहरू। गभर्मेन्ट पनि हामी यही छौँ, प्राइभेट सेक्टर पनि तपाईँहरू यही हुनुहुन्छ, र लिडर्सले नै हो त्यो कुनै इन्स्टिट्युसनलाई सफल असफल पार्ने। तपाईँ हामी इन्भल्भ भएको इन्स्टिट्युसन नै हामीले कति सफल कति असफल पार्छौँ त्यो हेर्ने हो। सरकारले सन् 2026सम्म हामीले चाहिँ एलडिसी ग्रेजुएसन हुने भनेका छौँ। त्यसको लागि पनि हामीले केही च्यालेन्जिङ कामहरू गर्नुपर्ने छ। इकोनोमीमा वर्ल्ड ब्याङ्कले गरेको स्टडीले पनि हाम्रो $9 बिलियन बराबरको एक्सपोर्ट पोटेन्सियल छ भन्छ। अहिले हार्डली $1 बिलियन बराबरको एक्सपोर्ट गर्दैछौँ, त्यो पनि अर्काको देशको र मेटेरियल ल्याएर यसो प्याकेजिङ गरेर धेरै मात्रामा त्यस्तो छ। त्यो होइन, यही छ पोटेन्सियल। त्यो 9 बिलियनको त इस्टाब्लिस फ्याक्ट हो। त्यो हो, त्यो स्पेसमा यहाँहरूले प्ले गर्नु पऱ्यो कि। $9 अरब बराबरको हामीसँग त्यहाँ छ नि त स्पेस, त्यो प्ले गरौँ। सन् 2030सम्म हामीले चाहिँ मिडल इन्कम कन्ट्रीमा पुग्ने भनेका छौँ, र हामी एसडिजीमा कमिटेड छौँ, सस्टेनेबल डेभलपमेन्ट गोलमा कमिटेड छौँ। र त्यसको एकदम मेन मोटो भनेको लिभिङ नो ओन बिहाइन्ड, होइन र? कसैलाई पनि पछि नछोडिकन हामीले विकास गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। त्यसमा यहाँहरूको रोल महत्त्वपूर्ण हुनेछ। यहाँहरूले त्यही किसिमको रोलहरू खेलिदिनु हुनेछ, खेलि पनि राख्नु भएको छ। अब इनोभेसनमा, टेक्नोलोजीमा, डिजिटल इकोनोमीमा मैले यहाँ धेरै भन्नु परेन। अहिले धेरै वास्तवमा हामीलाई डिजिटल इकोनोमीमा पनि हामीले धेरै फड्को मारिसकेका छौँ। यसलाई अलिक कन्सोलिडेट गर्नुपर्ने डट्सहरू छ, त्यसलाई लिङ्कअप गरिदिनुपर्ने अवस्था छ। त्यसमा यहाँहरूको सहयोगको अपेक्षा राख्छौँ। र यति भन्दै अब आज यो अवसर दिनुभयो यहाँहरू जस्तो विद्वत वर्ग सँग, प्राइभेट सेक्टरको चाहिँ नेतृत्वसँग बसेर यति भए पनि भलाकुसारी गर्ने र केही गभर्मेन्टको तर्फबाट आफ्नो व्यक्तिगत तर्फबाट पनि केही कुरा चाहिँ राख्ने मौका पनि दिनुभयो। यसको लागि म आयोजकलाई धन्यवाद दिन्छु। र यो वास्तवमा अत्यन्तै समसामयिक कन्फरेन्स गर्नुभएको छ। म म्यानको अध्यक्षजीलाई स्पेसल्ली चाहिँ उहाँलाई धेरै बधाई पनि दिन चाहन्छु। र यो 2 दिनसम्म चल्ने कन्फरेन्सको एउटा कन्स्ट्रक्टिभ चाहिँ आउटकम निस्किन्छ भन्ने कामनासहित यसको पूर्ण सफलताको कामना पनि गर्छु। धन्यवाद, नमस्कार।
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your very optimistic and inspiring statements, of course, encouraging as well. Thank you for furnishing answers and clarity to all those skepticism and curiosities as well. And apologies for the technical glitch herein. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, what we are seeking from this forum, from this very relevant, that's what we've been stressing on, relevant convergence of management leaders, is to create that synergy amongst all of us, the players, the professionals, the policymakers, and everyone in there. And having, pulled through so much of complexities in the long past, and then still having to expect a lot more in the future, it's really, really important to create that synergy, maintain that coordination as we look forward towards a common goal of prosperity. And said that, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to steer you to the most important part, something that we've been waiting for a long time. Please join me now in placing a humble request to our chief guest, the Honorable Minister, Mr. Gyanendra Bahadur Karki, to address this forum.
धन्यवाद। कार्यक्रम का सभा अध्यक्ष एवं नेपाल व्यवस्थापन सङ्घका अध्यक्ष किरण कुमार श्रेष्ठज्यू, कार्यक्रममा उपस्थित अर्थ सचिवज्यू, बिन्दु लोहनीज्यू, सुमन पोखरेलज्यू, नेपाल व्यवस्थापन सङ्घका पदाधिकारीज्यूहरू, कार्यक्रममा भिन्न भिन्न जिम्मेवारीमा रहनुभएका विभिन्न क्षेत्रका विशेषज्ञज्यूहरू, विभिन्न क्षेत्रको प्रतिनिधित्व गरी पाल्नुभएका कार्यकारी प्रमुख तथा व्यवस्थापकज्यूहरू, सञ्चारकर्मी मित्रहरू लगायत सम्पूर्ण विशिष्ट व्यक्तित्वहरूमा म हार्दिक अभिवादन गर्न चाहन्छु। नेपाल व्यवस्थापन सङ्घद्वारा आयोजना गरिएको यस विशेष महत्त्व र फरक किसिमको कार्यक्रममा उपस्थित भएर केही शब्द राख्ने अवसर दिनुभएकोमा किरणजी लगायत आयोजक मित्रहरूलाई हार्दिक आभार व्यक्त गर्न चाहन्छु। मुलुकले तय गरेको दिगो आर्थिक विकास तथा आर्थिक समृद्धिको लक्ष्य प्राप्तिका लागि सबै तहका सरकार लगायत सम्बद्ध सरकारवालाहरूले उत्तिकै महत्त्वपूर्ण भूमिका रहने कुरामा हामी सबैमा दुई मत छैन र हामी सबैलाई विदित छ। यसै सन्दर्भमा लामो समयसम्मको कोभिड सङ्क्रमणको सन्तासबाट गुज्रिएको अर्थतन्त्र र जनजीवनलाई गतिशील तुल्याउन सहयोग पुग्ने गरी नेपाल व्यवस्थापन सङ्घले रिइन्जिनियरिङ, म्यानेजमेन्ट, सर्भाइभल, रिभाइभल, ग्रोथ थिमसहित आयोजना गरेको यो सिओ कन्फरेन्स निकै समसामयिक फलदायी हुने अपेक्षा मैले राखेको छु। आजको यस कार्यक्रममा वित्तीय, स्वास्थ्य, शिक्षा, पूर्वाधार, पर्यटन, सूचना प्रविधि, उद्यमशीलता लगायतका मुख्य 7 आयाममाथि सम्बन्धित विज्ञहरूको रोबरमा व्यापक छलफल गरिने भएकोले यसबाट यी क्षेत्रमा विद्यमान समस्याहरू पहिचान गरी नीति निर्माण कार्यमा समेत निकै सहयोग पुग्ने मैले विश्वास लिएको छु। कुनै पनि सङ्घ, संस्था वा जिम्मेवार निकाय सफल हुनका लागि त्यसले तय गर्ने लक्ष्य र सो प्राप्तिका लागि गरिएको प्रयास प्रमुख विषय मानिन्छ। उपयुक्त योजनाको तर्जुमा र सफल कार्यान्वयनका लागि संस्थाको कार्यकारी प्रमुख र व्यवस्थापकहरूको भूमिका प्रधान हुन्छ। व्यावसायिक क्षेत्रमा बाह्य वातावरण सृजना हुने चुनौती तथा अवसर समेतका बारेमा सामूहिक छलफल गरी अघि बढ्दा सबै पक्षलाई लाभ हुने निश्चित नै छ। नेपालको आर्थिक विकासको सम्भावनाका आधार मानिँदै आएको कृषि, पर्यटन, जलविद्युत लगायतको क्षेत्रमा हाल उद्यमी व्यवसायहरूले भोग्नु परेका आर्थिक, प्रशासनिक र व्यावहारिक कठिनाइहरू बारेमा अनुभवी र विज्ञ मित्रहरूको समेतको उपस्थितिमा सम्बन्धित क्षेत्रका कार्यकारी प्रमुखहरूसँग हुने अन्तर्क्रियाले पक्कै नै केही महत्त्वपूर्ण निचोडमा पुग्न मद्दत मिल्नेछ भन्ने मैले विश्वास लिएको छु। देशमा विद्यमान विभिन्न समस्याहरूको बावजुद उपलब्ध स्रोत र साधनलाई प्रभावकारी रूपमा परिचालन गर्ने सवालमा सबै क्षेत्रमा क्रियाशील व्यवस्थापन पक्षको विशेष भूमिका रहने गर्दछ। सैद्धान्तिक विषय र अन्यत्र प्रयोगमा आएका विधिमा मात्र निर्भर नभई मुलुक सुहाउँदो व्यवस्थापकीय खाका र संरचना निर्माण गरी परिणाममुखी बनाउने कार्यमा नेपाल व्यवस्थापन सङ्घको महत्त्वपूर्ण भूमिका रहेको समेत स्मरण गर्न चाहन्छु। यसका लागि नियमित अध्ययन र अनुसन्धान गर्ने कार्यलाई सङ्घले प्राथमिकतामा राख्न पर्ने विषयमा पनि विशेष जोड दिन चाहन्छु। उद्यमशीलताको विकास र सम्वर्धन प्रवर्धन मार्फत आन्तरिक रोजगारी र उत्पादकत्व वृद्धिमा विशेष सहयोग पुर्याउने गरी लगानी र व्यवस्थापन गर्न अति आवश्यक भएकोले सोही बमोजिम योजना र रणनीति बनाएर अगाडि बढ्नु हामी सबैको दायित्व हो। यस कार्यलाई प्राथमिकतामा राखी अघि बढ्न सबै पक्षलाई आग्रह गर्दै सरकारका तर्फबाट आवश्यक समन्वय र सहजीकरण हुने कुरामा पनि म प्रतिबद्धता व्यक्त गर्न चाहन्छु। अत आजको यस महत्त्वपूर्ण कार्यक्रममा प्रस्तुत हुने 7वटा महत्त्वपूर्ण विषयमा उठेका सवाल र सुझावहरूलाई एकीकृत गरी तत्काल कार्यान्वयन गर्न सकिने मुद्दाहरूको टिपोट सम्बन्धित निकायमा पुर्याउने कार्यमा सङ्घले समन्वय गर्नेछ भन्ने आशा लिएको छु। 4 दशकभन्दा लामो इतिहास बोकेको नेपाल व्यवस्थापन सङ्घले मुलुकको लागि आवश्यक विभिन्न नीति नियम तर्जुमा र जनशक्ति विकासका विभिन्न तवरले पुर्याएको रचनात्मक सहयोग एवं योगदान समेतको प्रशंसा गर्न चाहन्छु। अन्तमा नेपाल व्यवस्थापन सङ्घको यस कार्यक्रम लगायत भोलि सम्पन्न हुने नेसनल म्यानेजमेन्ट कन्भेन्सन तथा नेसनल म्यानेजमेन्ट अवार्ड सेरेमनी कार्यक्रमको समेत सफलताको कामना गर्दछु। साथै भोलि सम्पन्न हुन गइरहेको सङ्घको 20औं प्रबन्ध समितिको निर्वाचन मार्फत सक्षम र योग्य पदाधिकारीहरूको चयन भई सङ्घले अझै सफलता हासिल गर्न सफल होस् भन्ने शुभकामना दिन चाहन्छु। हामीसँग धेरै साधन र स्रोतहरू छन्। यी साधन र स्रोतहरू हामीलाई प्रकृतिबाट प्रदत्त छन् र हामीसँग दक्ष जनशक्ति पनि छ र हामीले यो देशलाई चाँडै नै एसियाको समृद्ध देशमा स्तर उन्नति होस् भन्ने हामी नेपालीहरूको चाहना छ। त्यसअनुसार अगाडि बढ्नका निमित्त हामीले मुलुकलाई आत्मनिर्भर बनाउन जरुरी छ। मुलुकमा उत्पादनको वृद्धि गर्न जरुरी छ र त्यसलाई वितरण गर्न पनि जरुरी छ र हामी दक्षिण एसियामै उदार अर्थतन्त्र र खुला समाज र संविधानले परिकल्पना गरेको जुन हाम्रो समाजको हामीले परिकल्पना गरेका छौँ र नेपाली जनताको जुन इच्छा र आकाङ्क्षा छ त्यसलाई सफल बनाउनका निमित्त यो मुलुकमा तपाईहरूको धेरै महत्त्वपूर्ण भूमिका रहन सक्दछ। यहाँ तपाईहरूको एक से एक विशिष्टता हासिल गरेका व्यक्तित्वहरू हुनुहुन्छ र तपाईँ हामी सबै मिलेर हाम्रा के कठिनाइहरू छन् तिनीहरूलाई पहिचान गरेर अब केवल भाषण गरेर गोष्ठी र सेमिनार गरेर मात्र होइन, अब हामीले कार्यान्वयन गरेर मुलुकलाई समृद्धिको दिशातर्फ अग्रसर गराउन सकौँ। चाहे पहाडमा बस्ने होस्, चाहे तराईमा बस्ने होस्, चाहे हिमालमा बस्ने होस्, विकासका प्रबल हकदार उनीहरू हुन्। उनीहरूको जीवन स्तर अभिवृद्धि गर्नका निमित्त र यो देशलाई 10 वर्षभित्रमा धनी देश बनाउनका निमित्त हामी सबै एक भएर अगाडि बढ्न सकौँ र यो दिशामा अग्रसर हुनका निमित्त तपाईहरूको यो महत्त्वपूर्ण भेलाले महत्त्वपूर्ण सुझाव र निष्कर्ष निकाल्नेछ भन्ने मैले विश्वास लिएको छु र तपाईहरूको यो भेलाको म पूर्ण सफलताको कामना गर्दछु र मलाई यो अवसर दिनुभएकोमा म फेरि पनि किरणजी लगायत आयोजक समितिलाई धन्यवाद दिँदै केही मेरा लिखित भनाइहरू यहाँहरूसँग राखेको छु र यो देशको म पनि एउटा नागरिक हुँ र हामी सबै मिलेर यो देश बनाऊँ। त्यस दिशामा हामी सबैलाई अगाडि बढ्ने प्रेरणा मिलोस्। यिनै शुभकामनाका सहित मेरो भनाइ अन्त गर्न चाहन्छु। धन्यवाद। जय नेपाल।
धेरै कृतज्ञता ज्ञापन गर्न चाहन्छु माननीय मन्त्रीज्यूमा। यहाँका मार्गदर्शक, शुभेच्छा, शुभकामना अनि प्रतिबद्धता रूपी शब्दभावहरू र विशेष गरी यहाँको अत्यन्तै महत्त्वपूर्ण उपस्थितिको लागि। Ladies and gentlemen, with this address we now arrive towards the final moments of the opening ceremony of the Whirling Presents CEO Conference 2022, and it's my pleasure of inviting the President of the Management Association of Nepal, Mr. Kumar Shrestha, for his remarks, and I also request him as the session chair to adjourn the session.
धन्यवाद शिवानी जी। आज यो सीओ कन्फरेन्स 2022 को प्रमुख आतिथ्यता गरिरहनुभएका सूचना तथा सञ्चार माननीय मन्त्री ज्ञानेन्द्र बहादुर कार्कीज्यू, त्यस्तै यस कार्यक्रमका विशिष्ट अतिथि अर्थ सचिव श्रीमान मधु मरासिनीज्यू, त्यस्तै एडीबीका पूर्व सल्लाहकार बिन्दुनाथ लोहनी सर, अनि त्यस्तै म्यानका भाइस प्रेसिडेन्ट सुमन पोखरेल सर, उपस्थित म्यानका पूर्व सभापतिज्यूहरू, पदाधिकारीज्यूहरू र विभिन्न क्षेत्रबाट आउनुभएका विभिन्न व्यक्तित्वहरू, महानुभावहरू, विभिन्न संस्थाका प्रतिनिधिहरू, महिला तथा सञ्चालनविद, पत्रकार बन्धुहरू सबैमा म म्यानको सभापतिको हैसियतले र व्यक्तिगत हैसियतमा पनि हार्दिक नमस्कार तथा अभिवादन व्यक्त गर्न चाहन्छु। आज हामी सीओ कन्फरेन्सको यो उद्घाटन सत्रमा छौँ र नेपाल व्यवस्थापन सङ्घको हिस्ट्रीमै हामीले पहिलोपटक सीओ कन्फरेन्स यो आयोजना गरेर गइरहेका छौँ। यो हाम्रो लागि पनि एउटा नितान्त नौलो प्रयोग र अभ्यास हो। त्यसले गर्दाखेरि हामीले यसलाई अगाडि बढाउने सिलसिलामा जुन ढङ्गको जस्तो हुनुपर्ने भन्ने लाग्छ यसमा कतिपय कमजोरीहरू भएको हुनसक्छ। यसमा सुरुमै म यो कुराहरू यहाँहरूसँग क्षमा याचना पनि गर्न चाहन्छु। यद्यपि हामीले जुन नेपाल व्यवस्थापन सङ्घले आज 40औं वर्ष पार गरेर अगाडि बढिरहँदाखेरि हामीले यसको स्थापना कालमा जुन प्रस्तावनामा नेपालको व्यवस्थापन क्षेत्रमा एउटा म्यानेजमेन्ट ल्याबको रूपमा यसलाई विकास गरेर काम गर्ने भन्ने यसको जुन आधारभूत मान्यता थियो, त्यो आधारभूत मान्यतामा हामी अगाडि बढिरहँदाखेरि साँच्चै नै हामीले त्यो मान्यतालाई कति पुरा गर्न सक्यौँ वा सकेनौँ र त्यसमा के रह्यो भन्ने खालको हामीले समीक्षाहरू गऱ्यौँ। हाम्रो कार्य समितिभित्र हाम्रो त्यो छलफलहरू भयो। त्यसो भएको हुनाले हामीले के महसुस गऱ्यौँ भनेदेखि हामीले जुन ढङ्गले विभिन्न खालका हामीले क्रियाकलापहरू गरिरहेका छौँ, त्यो क्रियाकलापहरूको अतिरिक्त पनि व्यवस्थापकीय क्षेत्रमा भएका चुनौतीहरू, व्यवस्थापकीय क्षेत्रमा भएका अभ्यासहरू, चाहे त्यो राष्ट्रिय अभ्यासहरू, अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय अभ्यासहरू र त्यसबाट नेपालको मौलिकतामा हामीले त्यसलाई कसरी सृजनात्मक रूपले लागू गर्न सकिन्छ भन्ने कुराहरूमा हाम्रो ध्यान केन्द्रित गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने ढङ्गको एउटा निष्कर्षहरू हाम्रो निस्किसकेपछि यसलाई कहाँबाट सुरुवात गर्ने भनेपछि हामीले यो सीओ कन्फरेन्सको अवधारणाहरू आयो र सीओ कन्फरेन्सको अवधारणा आउँदा नितान्त रूपमा हामी विभिन्न फोरममा हामी यही काठमाडौँभित्र पनि यता मुलुकभित्रै पनि विभिन्न फोरममा विभिन्न तरिकाले हामी सहभागी भइरहेका हुन्छौँ। कहिले हामी वक्ताको रूपमा, कहिले मोडरेटरको रूपमा, कहिले श्रोताको रूपमा विभिन्न छौँ र एउटै फोरममा हामी सबै नहुन पनि सक्छौँ। त्यसो भएको हुनाले देशभरिका जुनसुकै क्षेत्रका, चाहे त्यो ब्याङ्क तथा वित्तीय संस्था होस्, त्यो सार्वजनिक संस्थानहरू होस्, चाहे त्यो आइटी सेक्टरको होस्, चाहे त्यो अन्य कुनै पनि सेक्टर, प्राइभेट सेक्टरको कुनै पनि अर्गनाइजेसनमा भएका सिओहरू, व्यवस्थापकहरू बिचमा चाहिँ एउटा चाहिँ सम्मेलन गर्ने र त्यो सम्मेलनमा हामीले स्पेसिफिक रूपमा त्यही क्षेत्रका विज्ञहरूले त्यसमा प्रस्तोताको रूपमा गर्ने र मोडरेटरको रूपमा गर्ने र पेनलिस्टको रूपमा रहने र सहभागी पनि त्यहीँबाट हुने र त्यस खालको जुन छलफलहरू गरिसकेपछि यो एउटा खालि सैद्धान्तिक किताबी कुराहरू मात्र होइन, यो नेपालको परिप्रेक्ष्यमा अहिले जुन आइरहेको म्यानेजमेन्टको च्यालेन्जहरू छन् त्यो च्यालेन्जलाई हल गर्न सक्ने ढङ्गले अगाडि बढ्नुपर्छ भन्ने निष्कर्षमा हामीहरू पुग्यौँ र यो कार्यक्रमहरू हामीले गरिरहेका छौँ। यो कार्यक्रम गरिरहँदाखेरि अहिलेको सन्दर्भमा नेपालको परिप्रेक्ष्य अथवा विश्वकै परिप्रेक्ष्य सबैभन्दा जल्दो बल्दो कोभिड-19 को जुन खालको प्रभाव छ त्यसले राष्ट्रिय अर्थतन्त्र र सामाजिक जीवनमा पारेका जुन प्रभावहरू छन् त्यो प्रभावहरूको बारेमा कसरी सम्बोधन गर्न सकिन्छ भन्ने हिसाबले हामीले विभिन्न विषयवस्तुहरूलाई प्राथमिकतामा राख्दै जाँदाखेरि रिइन्जिनियरिङ म्यानेजमेन्टको जुन हाम्रो थिमलाई हामीले चुज गऱ्यौँ र जुन हामीले चाहिँ सर्भाइभल रिभाइभल र ग्रोथको कुराहरू अहिलेको जल्दो बल्दो चुनौती र आवश्यकता हो भन्ने खालको कुरालाई हामीले महसुस गरिसकेपछि त्यो कुरालाई हामीले यो अगाडि बढाएको छौँ र यो 7वटा सेक्टरमा अहिले यो छलफल हुन गइरहेको छ जुन कुराहरू सुमनजीले पनि अघि आफ्नो प्रेजेन्टेसनमा यसको मोडालिटीको बारेमा राखिसकेको छ। त्यसो भएको हुनाले हामी यो सम्मेलनमा वास्तवमा अहिले उठिरहेका जीवन्त समस्याहरूलाई हाम्रो मौलिक समस्याहरूलाई हाम्रा चुनौतीहरूलाई हामी मौलिक ढङ्गले नै छलफल गर्न चाहन्छौँ र मौलिक ढङ्गले निष्कर्ष निकाल्न चाहन्छौँ। हामी कुनै किताबकोबाट अथवा कुनै विदेशी नक्कलबाट वा कुनै खालको अनुभवहरूबाट भन्दा पनि हामी हाम्रो देशको सन्दर्भमा हाम्रो देशको सामाजिक राजनीतिक आर्थिक परिवेशमा अगाडि बढिरहँदाखेरि भोगिरहेका समस्या र त्यसको नेपालीपनमा अथवा मौलिक रूपले स्वदेशीपनमा कसरी यसलाई समाधान गर्न सकिन्छ भन्ने खालको निष्कर्षहरू निकालेर त्यसको निष्कर्षहरू राज्यको त्यो निकायहरू तत्त निकायहरू जहाँ सम्बन्धित निकायहरूमा हामी सम्प्रेषण गर्नेछौँ र त्यो कुराहरू त्यहाँ पुर्याउनेछौँ र यसबाट आएका सुझावहरूलाई हामी विभिन्न ठाउँहरूमा सञ्चार माध्यमहरूबाट पनि हामी प्रकाशन गर्नेछौँ र आगामी कार्यक्रमको लागि पनि हामी यो मार्गदर्शनको रूपमा हामी यसलाई लिनेछौँ भन्ने कुराहरू म राख्न चाहन्छु। र यहाँ हाम्रो प्रमुख अतिथिज्यूको धेरै व्यस्तता छ र मैले उहाँलाई बारम्बार चाहिँ के म हामी एकदम कार्यक्रमलाई छिटो सक्छौँ भनेर किनभने उहाँको अर्को टाइम थियो त्यो कुरा मैले टाइम लिँदाखेरि उहाँले भन्नुभएको थियो तैपनि उहाँले हाम्रो यो कार्यक्रमको प्राथमिकता दिएर ल ठिक छ म अरू कार्यक्रमहरू सारेर भने तपाईँहरूको कार्यक्रममा आउँछु र त निर्धारित समयमा सुरु गरेर सक्ने भन्ने खालको हाम्रो प्रतिबद्धता पनि रहेको छ। त्यस अनुरूप म अहिले हाम्रो प्रमुख अतिथिज्यू माननीय मन्त्रीज्यूलाई म म्यानको तर्फबाट एकदमै हार्दिक कृतज्ञता र धन्यवाद ज्ञापन गर्न चाहन्छु। त्यस्तै अर्थ सचिवज्यूलाई पनि म हार्दिक धन्यवाद तथा कृतज्ञता ज्ञापन गर्न चाहन्छु। त्यस्तै बिन्दुनाथ लोहनी सरलाई पनि म धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु र उपस्थित सम्पूर्ण महानुभावहरूलाई उपस्थित र यो कार्यक्रममा जुन ढङ्गले शोभा बढाइदिनु भएको छ र सहभागी भइरहनु भएको छ त्यसको निमित्त पनि म हार्दिक धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु। र मैले अहिले पछि पनि मेरो धन्यवाद दिने कार्यक्रम भए तापनि अहिले सुरुमै पनि जो सिओ कन्फरेन्समा जुन खालको हाम्रो चाहिँ एउटा चाहिँ टास्क फोर्स बनेको थियो त्यो टास्क फोर्सको सम्पूर्ण साथीहरू र हाम्रो जुन म्यानेजमेन्ट टिमभित्र पनि हाम्रो म्यानेजमेन्टमा हाम्रो इडी अनिल उपाध्याय लगायतका टिमहरूले जुन ढङ्गले यहाँसम्म ल्याइ पुर्याउनु भएको छ मलाई लाग्छ यो इफोर्टले गर्दाखेरि आजको दिनभरिमा हाम्रो कार्यक्रमहरू अगाडि राम्ररी त्यो निर्धारित समयमा सुरु भएर निर्धारित समय सम्पन्न हुनेछ र पछि समापन समारोहमा त्यसको मूल्याङ्कन सहबाट हुनेछ र त्यो मूल्याङ्कनको बेलामा विशेष बढी धन्यवाद म त्यति बेला दिने कुरा राख्दै मेरो भनाइ यही टुङ्ग्याउँछु र धन्यवाद र यो प्रथम सत्र पनि यही सकिएको जानकारी गराउँछु। हस्त नमस्कार।